Celtics cap and sunglasses would have kept his identity hidden. Apparently not. Now he'd been badgered into giving the college baseball team a special visit and pep talk. Normally, he'd be all over something like that. He loved encouraging young players and inspiring them to work hard for their dreams. But right now, nursing a bad knee and a bruised ego, he wanted to bury his head in the sand and pretend the baseball world wasn't rotating without him. Too bad the rest of the season was gone. His best season. At least, it should have been. Inside the house, there was a loud thump. Ryan tipped his face upward toward the sky and wondered why he'd even bothered coming home. His penthouse apartment in Toronto was perfectly comfortable, and he had a great view of Lake Ontario. You know why, he said to himself. Ryan would never, ever admit it out loud, but when he was licking his wounds, all he wanted was family around him. He'd been that way since he was a kid. Yet that wasn't the only reason he'd bolted out of Toronto at the first opportunity. He could see the stadium where his team, the Blizzards, played from his living room. It was also the place where they would be hosting their games after making the playoffs for the first time since a massive rebuild. He'd put up with the growing pains of the rebuild, like sloppy defense work while they rotated through position players, trying to find the right combination. He'd put up with stale bats and poor morale and a losing streak that had almost broken a franchise record. He'd put up with all of it for the hope of what would come. And this season, they'd sparkled like gold. Their young designated hitter was smashing balls out of every park, their third baseman was in line for MVP, and Ryan had his sights set on a Cy Young Award. All it had taken was one wrong move. Assisting a rundown between second and first, which would have been an important out for the game, but nothing wildly out of the ordinary. Certainly nothing he'd thought would end his season. But he twisted to avoid a collision with the runner and felt something give as he laid the tag down. A flare of pain so sharp it had made his eyes water and a cry catch in the back of his throat. Despair had flooded him as he'd pounded his fist into the earth, knowing in his heart it was more than a sprain. He should be there right now, taking the mound, securing the win, bringing his team to victory, not hiding away at home. Ryan pushed up onto his feet. It was no good sitting alone with his thoughts right now. That was the reason he'd come home. Distraction. He'd needed to be surrounded by people that wouldn't walk on eggshells around him, who wouldn't dwell on what he'd lost, who wouldn't remind him of how easily everything he'd worked toward could disappear. How long had he been outside? Surely, long enough that his parents had run out of puff, so to speak. Tentatively, he made his way to the door and creaked it open, ears straining. Silence. For a second, Ryan thought that Chapter 21 might be over. Not like that, his mother's voice sounded through the bedroom wall, which backed onto the living room. Bend over a bit more. That's it. Squeak, squeak, squeak. He was officially done. Thank God he'd been cleared to drive. He needed to get out of here, and driving around the sleepy, nighttime streets of Kissing Creek was the best option he had. As he walked through the house on the way to the front door, he spotted a book sitting on the coffee table. Stormy Pleasures was mostly black and white, but the spine and back were bright red, and this version had library stickers. A post-it note stuck to the front said, Book Club with Sloane Rickman. Wow. Looked like the library book club had gone a little risque. The squeaking intensified. Okay, a lot risque. Shaking his head, Ryan headed to the front door and snatched his keys from the hook on the wall. Today, he was going to find a new place to stay, and then he was going to jam Stormy Pleasures through the garbage disposal. Sloane Rickman was living the dream. Granted, her personal dream looked a little different from the kind Hollywood tried to sell her. There was no tripping through city streets in an expensive pair of stilettos.